Yeah, I mean, this test that I just posted. I don't know if people saw it, but it's this. Basically, it's like kind of through like a daisy chain, iteratively producing a very very long flat piece of wood, in space, in the air, with the drones. I understand there's limitations if people are doing it. That was just more for visual effect. Um, it's but to me, it really is the only thing, just from looking at things that people are doing, and maybe there have been experiments that I just haven't come across yet, or tests. But to me, something like this is like not subjective at all. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to conduct, but and no one might actually end up doing it, but in the very least, it's a good thought experiment. And fundamentally, we have to like remind ballers what their beliefs are. That if there were to be a really long wooden plank in space and a level were to run over it, I honestly can't even picture necessarily how the level would react, but it would move. It would have to move in a way that honestly I can't even visualize. But that's the theory. It's just if a level is moving far enough along a flat surface, a plane suspended in space, it can't stay put. That's just impossible. That means that gravity is not real. That means gravity is not interacting with that level in any way. And so, whatever distance a person does, if nothing changes, they would just say you need to go further. And then, if people kept going further and further and further, and they were able to create a long plank daisy chained without any, issues, they're able to take, one wooden piece, bring it to the front, back one, bring it to the front, and keep showing two level readings over and over and over again. I mean, that's pretty much it. Someone's asking, are you talking about the bubble liquid device to test whether a surface is level in an environment where the only gravitational source is the wooden plank? No, I'm just I'm coming up with a way to interact with gravity, and using the level, Carpenter's level, as the mechanism to do so. And so, the baller theory says that, if you fundamentally, if you're in a different position in space, three-dimensional space, you're experiencing a different gravity vector orientation, and its responsibility, one of many things, is to keep you on the ball Earth. And so that's, when you're in one part of the world, you're getting a gravity vector that is a particular orientation that's needed for that, wherever you are on that part of the ball. And then if you move somewhere else, the orientation is changing, to keep you essentially feeling like you're on a flat plane, but you're actually clinging to a ball. And so if those vectors are real, then I want to experience them. I want a device. I want something moving around in a predictable way to show me that those vectors are real. And if they are real, then that's fine. Then they're real. That's great. And the test that I suggested in my most recent post is not it's not voodoo, it's not witchcraft, it's not asking for anything outlandish technological, like, technology wise. It's stuff that we have. Like, people could argue about the lengths of the wood, and could a drone support a plank and all that, and that's fair. Those are implementation details, but this is an experiment that can be done. I'm not saying it can be done by tomorrow, but it's way less than the breadth of technology that we have available to us. So Bob, the science guy, he posted something that I deleted. So I don't know if you want to quickly, type your question so everybody can see it, but I'm pretty vigilant when it comes to deleting posts that don't mean anything to me, and I don't think will help anybody, because you would have to say something that I said was incorrect, or, you know, refine the experiment, or say, you know, what you're thinking will happen is incorrect or whatever. And I haven't got that. And I know that this is what needs to happen. There's no debate here. I've already gone back and forth with people, and any honest ball earther will agree that if someone were to do this experiment with rigor and, you know, like, care, there's nothing that would need to be redefined in the experiment. Let's just take a step back. Do you at least agree that if again, this is a theoretical exercise. Let's say you had a 10, 15, 20, 30 mile length wooden plank that, you know, you could run a level all the way across it, and it's you know, we would understand it as level. If you would extend that thing far, like even further, let's say you had like let's say we started out with like a 5-foot plank that we could, you know, rub a level across it, and it's showing that it's flat. And then we could magically just push a button and then make that thing just get wider and wider on both sides. And just for the sake of argument, let's say it's suspended in space, just so there's no obstruction. Baller theory says that once you rub the level across that very, very long plank, the level is going to change orientation. Do you disagree with that? I'm asking Bob the science guy. So, sorry, is of course in relation to what I just said. Do you agree with that? Like different cities at different latitudes, checking levels at those cities would mean the level changes orientation. Yeah, we're not talking about cities. We're talking about a piece of wood. So this is what I don't like what ballers do, and I'm not trying to be mean, but we're not talking about cities, latitude, longitude. Cities is a man-made thing. You know, humans made cities. That's fine. And then latitude, longitude are concepts that are not needed for this experiment, because that's not a parameter in this experiment at all. It's okay. No, that's fair. So that's fine. Let's say you would need. That's a fair statement. If you think that we need a 300-mile piece of wood, that's fine. But you do agree that if that thing were to be suspended up in space, and clearly, you know, ballers believe we have a lot of room up in space, so there's no shortage of room up there. If we were to be able to suspend this piece of wood, and then a level were to be run across it from one end to the other, it would not stay level the entire time. That could not happen, or else gravity does not exist. And so my experiment is essentially to recreate that. You know, it's instead of like the forcing the curve experiment that I've heard other people talk about, this is kind of forcing the G. You know, force the G to interact with us in a way that is tangible and you know, rigorous and reproducible. You know, it's like no one would argue this, and it's isolated. There's no other phenomenon. There's no density, buoyancy, gradient. There's nothing like that. There's no perspective. There's no height of the observer. There's no looming or all these different, you know, things. So for now, that's why, you know, I'm not trying to be rude with people, but I delete posts that don't come with something new. No, that's not true. If it were 6 feet off the ground for 300 miles, yes, you could slide level right along. It would be level the whole way. That's not true. I don't think Bob the science guy understands gravity vectors. Those apparently in baller theory is that if you move from one position in space to another, you are experiencing a different orientation of gravity vectors. It would have to be. If you're on a ball and you're moving to a different place on the ball, of course, you know, the vector that's keeping you there, quote unquote, pinning you to the ground, it has a lot of other functions apparently, but let's start with that. It would have a different orientation. So if it has a different orientation and you move 300 miles, it can't interact with the level in the same way from when it began. That's impossible. That's just not, that's not real. You know, again, we're talking about a flat plank of wood that's suspended in space. And so when you move from one end to the other, it's experiencing a different gravity vector. It has a different orientation by definition. And so once you're getting to the level of 300 miles, that's appreciable. That's not like a 4 inches, you know, like I get, you know, if I move a level across my table, the argument is just that the gravity vector that's operating on this end of the table is the same orientation at that end of the table, which is fair because it's so local. No, we're not talking about going across the curve of the Earth. It's going across a flat plane, a level surface, you know, like a very, very long piece of wood. So VSRR83 is saying the gravitational vector will always point to the center of the Earth, but not the plank will not be level. I don't know. That doesn't make sense. So I think people are, you know, misunderstanding. And to me, this is very, very simple. And this worries me a little bit once there's this much confusion. This is not, again, I'm not saying it's easy to procure a 300-mile long piece of plywood or anything, but you know, that it's not impossible to make something like that, you know, or it is actually, I mean, obviously to have like a piece of wood that long, but the way I described it, doing it in segments, it is very much possible to do that. And instead of having a 300-mile long or 500-mile or 600-mile long piece of wood, I don't think you guys understand gravity. I'm not trying to be rude. So okay, so a flat piece of wood, okay, yes, it will always be perpendicular to the radius line of the Earth, even if it's flat. That's not true. That is just not true. If you hold up a flat piece of wood up in space, it is a different shape than the shape beneath it. That's the whole point of this experiment. Yeah, no, Manny, I get it, dude. It's not the point. You know, it's the whole point of this is to like make a 300-mile long thing with drones, like do it in chunks, like small pieces. I'm not saying, again, it's easy. It would take a lot of fuel to, you know, run the drones with batteries and all that. But again, just for now, let's keep it as a thought experiment. Let's agree on what we would observe before we can actually do it. I haven't said anything that's like theoretical, you know, voodoo or anything like that. This is real stuff. Like we could do this if we had enough, you know, resources. And so, yeah, if you could hold and suspend a 500-mile, 300-mile long wooden plank in the air, this has nothing to do with the altitude. I don't think you guys understand this notion of the gravity vector. So if you have think of an oblate spheroid, right? Picture that in your head. There is going to be gravity vectors everywhere around that thing pointing to the center of the Earth, correct? That's just what is keeping everything to the Earth. You know, wherever you are on that ball, those gravity vectors are there, and those are that orientation is fixed. That is the direction that things are held pinned to the ball. That's not changing. You know, the magnitude and all of that apparently is a field, a tensor field, which, you know, I still don't buy any of that. But the magnitude of this field depends on what's physically on the Earth, and all those F equals G M1 M2 you know, calculations that are being done. But the orientation is always the same. It has to be, or else we would be like tilting or leaning on this ball Earth. It has to be normal to the surface of the Earth. And so the thing is that if you move from any one position on ball Earth to anywhere else, you're experiencing a different gravity vector. That's just a fact. It's simple. Like, it doesn't matter what direction you go, latitude, longitude, what city you're in, what altitude you're in. It doesn't matter. If you're moving to a different position on the Earth or something above the Earth in three-dimensional space, that is I only said tensor field because Steve McRae said it, so trust me, I don't know. I mean, I don't believe that it's real, but don't quote me on that because I'm still trying to figure it out. But let's start with something that we know. If we're on a ball, there would be a force, whether you call it gravity or whatever, that would be acting in three-dimensional space towards the center of the Earth. That has to be, to keep things on it. So that's a fact. We don't actually care about the magnitude for this experiment. We just care about the orientation of the vectors. And so let's say this is ball Earth, and then our plank is like this. If I move from like the beginning of the plank to the end of the plank, I'm experiencing a different gravity vector. That's just by definition. You have to. It's the gravity vectors are not changing just because the plank is there. They exist all the time. They have to be to keep things on the ball in the various positions that they are, wherever they are. And so the whole point of this experiment, for me, obviously not believing that gravity exists, is that it's going to, at the center of that side, it would be perpendicular to the radius at that point. That doesn't make sense. What are you talking about? Yeah, so this is kind of the gibberish that we get dealing with ball earthers. If you read what Bob the Science Guy is saying, absolute madness. Talking about north-south, clearly, like, we're not even talking about north-south here. We're talking about anywhere on the ball. If you have elevated in space, a very, very long plank, again, I'm not saying that that's physically possible, that you can suspend that in space. But if you have a plank suspended in space, and you rub a level across it, ball earth theory, and no one disagrees with this. Like, I've had ball earth people agree with me on this, that the level will have to move. It's only going to stay level when it is perpendicular to a gravity vector. That's what gravity does. That's the reason why that levels work on a curve. It's simple. Like, this is not a mystery. This is not getting into anything really deep here. And so the only thing that ballers could argue is certain things related to sensitivity of the instruments. But we're talking about a level here, not really controversial. And, obviously there's some issue if the drones were like jittering and stuff. But that's my point about, capturing it on video and just doing a snapshot and all that kind of stuff. And so I've never actually worked with drones, so that may not actually, be possible yet, but I don't really think that would be that major of an issue to do something like this. But again, just taking a step back from even the drones thing, it's like, let's just say that, again, this really long piece of wood is somewhere in space. The ballers would agree from their theory that the level is not going to behave the same from one end to the other. It can't. And so if that were true, then we'd be living on a flat plane. So Bob the Science Guy, just from what he's been typing and what I deleted, I'm kind of more, I'm reaffirmed now that I made the right decision to delete his post, because he's talking about absolute gibberish. At the center of the plank, the gravitational vector would be at 90 degrees with respect to the direction of the plank. At the center of the plank, the gravity vector would be, no, that's not true. I don't understand how are you guys struggling with this, man? Like, this is your own stuff, dude. If you have a wooden plank in space, it is experiencing gravity vectors. Gravity's not orienting itself towards the plank. It is experiencing a gravity vector, whichever, the one that is pointing towards the center of the Earth, where it is. And my whole point is that if you move far enough, you're experiencing another one. That's obvious, because you're at a different point on this ball. And so I think it's definitely good that I ignore Bob the Science Guy going forward. So I kind of like when people say something absurd, because then I know for sure to kind of ignore what they say afterwards. So he's pretty much on that list now. The vector of gravity is in line with the radius line. Oh my God. That's mad funny. So I don't think any honest baller would disagree with what I said. They could argue, you know, sensitivity and can the drone actually perform this kind of thing and stuff. But, you know, from a flat Earth perspective, what I'm essentially saying is that if you were to do that experiment, you would have no trouble doing it. You could go for as far as you want. Like there's gonna, like, the thing's not gonna start shaking or moving or doing anything funny, or it's gonna be like, you can, like, you know, lift the drones up, you know, have this one go, have this one go. You could do it for as far as you want, as long as there's no obstruction in space and you go to a high enough altitude. So here's what the ballers do. Then they're like, did you have 8th grade science? And so this is mad funny. So Bob, you should check out my my video resume, and then you post yours, and let's see where you're at with your 8th grade stuff. Healthy, wealthy, and stealthy. So do you think the Earth is flat? I have no reason to not believe it's flat. I think my biggest thing that my bigger qualm is actually gravity than the actual shape, because gravity is something that, you know, one should be able to, like, experience, and the thing that I posted will allow us to experience it. If a baller is honest, they will have to say, like, yeah, you know, if this could be done with perfect precision, and if you were to, yeah, go far enough away from your original starting point. This guy has a doc. Okay, so from what school? So Bob, the science guy, claims to have a doctorate in sciences. So tell me the title of the degree and, like, what university. Now we have a doctorate in mathematics. Wow, we have we have some scholars in the building. Who don't seem to understand gravity. Okay, so yeah, Bob, we share a similar alma mater, so that's cool, man. So I went to NSU to actually get my master's in accounting, so definitely different field. But I'm assuming is it osteopathic medicine at NSU, or is it an MD? I thought all matter has a gravitational force. So healthy, wealthy, and stealthy, just to get you in on what I was talking about, was no, don't be ashamed. I find the mainstream MD is trash, so that's a better option. But healthy, wealthy, and stealthy, all I'm talking about are these gravity vectors that point perpendicular to the surface of the Earth, that exist whether there's anything on Earth or not. You know, it's just, apparently this is the thing that governs why things fall, you know, towards the center of the Earth, and why anything that is on the Earth, you know, is able to stay there wherever you are. Top, bottom, there's no notion of top, bottom, or whatever. It's, everyone's being pinned to this ball by gravity. Bob, don't worry, man. It's not Harvard, so yeah, don't be too ashamed, man. That's fine. But you know, I did my undergrad at University of Western in EE, and I have a professional master's in EE from Rice. So your desire to confuse the experiment has failed. So no, the issue isn't with communication, because it's the lack of integrity on the other person's side. You know, if someone were to come to me with an experiment, I will tell them what I have issues with, like the moon bounce thing. I mean, I mentioned to them, you know, that if one were to perform that, I think it would be cool to be involved in something like that. But it's not simply just blasting a bunch of radio waves and then just, you know, click, something comes back. You know, it's like that's not the way experiments work. You know, you don't just, like, push a button, magically frequencies get shown, you know, blasted in the atmosphere, and then, you know, they just, you know, they come knock on your door and tell you, we're back, we just came to the moon. You know, that's not the way anything works. You have to understand, you know, these waves, where they traveled, what they hit, you know, and then solve an inverse problem to reconstruct that. So just compute the gravitational potential and then take the gradient. This is madness. Like, I don't know if these people are trolls, and I'm not trying to be rude, but that what you're saying is absolutely madness. You know, like this is more and more. You guys are making it easier to be flat earthers because when we ask you a question, you go and talk about like a bunch of other different things, talk about things that have absolutely nothing to do with what I'm saying. Like I would rather hear stuff about drones, about sensitivity of the level, distances. You know, these are real things. Like this guy is talking about to understand the Planck issue, just compute the gravitational potential and then take the gradient. Like, wow. I mean, this is it is identical to the electrostatic problem. Like everybody knows, like, oh yeah, yeah, that's right, the electrostatic problem. It's like that, you know. So come on, like if you were talking about Newtonian mechanics, the above is very, very simple. So this makes sense. You know, this is very, very classic kind of interaction that I get on my comment boards as well, which is a little bit tedious. But you know, I would say maybe in like 15 or 20 messages, I get one that like, you know, I learned not necessarily anything major, but I can like use. And so I'm not quote unquote using people. You know, I try not to, but you know, when someone comes into my channel with stuff that I'm posting, my channel is for me. You know, I'm not the type of person who thinks that my channel is somehow like you know, some kind of charitable thing for other people. No, my channel is actually for myself. I am putting my ideas out there, and then other people can come and help me refine them. And then if someone else thinks the same way as me or wants their ideas refined or you know, knows what not to believe potentially, you know, with what I'm sharing, that's secondary, tertiary benefit. That's not what the objective of my channel is. So if somebody comes, first of all, someone comes in my channel and says that, you know, I'm dumb, that immediately, unless the person is somebody like on some different level, you know, and I've been around those people, and a lot of them, even them, they're not the type to say that to other people. So that immediately gets that person dismissed. So what about it when they take pictures from very high up? It looks round, I think. So, you know, that's fine then. If that, I'm not, these are things that are should reaffirm. This should give ballers like some, they should get excited about this. You know, it's like if this experiment is done, I put it out there as kind of a thought experiment, something theoretical, it will reaffirm gravity. I don't understand why people are so worried about this. Like ballers, if they're really into ball earth stuff, they should kind of call our bluff, you know, and push this experiment. You know, obviously I'm offering $1,000, which is not a lot of money, but you know, it's what I can do right now and what it's worth to me right now to be disproven. And so, you know, obviously I'm in a very, very, you know, strong position. I feel like, you know, that level will not move. You know, it will not. It's obvious. Like there is no way a level can have double duty and be required to you know, not register a movement along a flat plank locally, and then all of a sudden when it's non-local, it's going to start spazzing out. You know, that's not what it's designed for. That's not what it is. That's not a natural law. Like a level would be useless if that were the case. So now VSR 83 is like, basically, if you want to understand how ballers think, you should analyze the problem using Newtonian mechanics. Wow. I don't understand if like maybe the Ball Earth PR group is just like taking a vacation for the last little while, but the amount of just like confusion and madness, you know, that they're sharing, you know, language they're using to defend is ridiculous. Like it's becoming obvious. The more they do it, the more obvious it is. So I mean, you guys can keep putting the foot on the gas if you want, but that's just not a good strategy to employ. Newtonian mechanics has absolutely nothing to do with the observation of this experiment. If the thing starts moving, yeah, I'm going to start asking you guys a lot of different questions, you know, and I'm going to start reading all the, you know, and hopefully I do have time on this earth to like dig deeper, because if the level starts moving, once it moves across a flat surface for far enough, and there's no other explanation for it except gravity, because there's nothing else acting on that level except the pieces of wood that it's sitting on and the, you know, the atmosphere. And yeah, of course, I would get into Newtonian mechanics and all that stuff. You could try the Planck experiment by finding a laser level and then carrying a Carpenter levels on the same height. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, there could be even other. That's a good point. You could use a level and then also have something that kind of reaffirms that that it, we haven't violated this. My desire is to create an axis or a plane. If you think of it, if you're like want to use math language, it's like my responsibility for this test is to create a plane, and just have it be as far as needed to experience another gravity vector. I mean, this is obviously like a bit arrogant. Obviously, I don't need to do it because I know what's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, if I were to get access to drones or if we could agree on both sides what the distance would be, and we could calculate the battery life of the drones, and like this could actually be done. Yeah, I mean, I think an experiment like this doesn't have to be this one is conclusive, because once you prove gravity or disprove it, everything else falls apart. It's like it's kind of like you don't have to like prove multiple things. Obviously there will be more questions after that for sure, especially if gravity is not proven to be true. There'll be a lot of questions that would need to be asked about what are the explanations for these things that we've been relying on in the past that no longer hold. So that's fair, but this is the kind of thing that the more the energy that's out there on both sides, once an experiment, whoever like postulates it, and there's energy behind it, money and time and all that, I would be open to it, for sure. This one is what would be needed for me personally, but there could be other ones that are just as rigorous and bring out the truth explicitly and uniquely. And so to me, I think like anybody, again, with common sense, I'm not trying to make fun of people who sincerely are ball earthers, but I mean, you shouldn't have to do this experiment. I mean, that level, just, the level is not going to move. If a level traverses a flat plank, a flat surface, no matter how far, it's not going to change its orientation. Healthy, wealthy, and stealthy is like the sun is round, their moon is round, the earth is ... flat. Yeah, I mean, you guys don't like my answer to the sun and the moon, but God made those things. They're lights. In the book of Genesis, that's what I experience them to be. They illuminate. And obviously, if we don't trust the shape of the earth narrative, we're not going to trust what the sun and the moon do. So yeah, I mean I mean we're not into trite little tidbits of philosophy, like Occam's razor and all this kind of. I don't care. I honestly don't care about that. I think that I mean, honestly, VSR R83 brings up a good point, because I was about to join Viasat in San Diego for my first job out of Rice, because the CEO is a Rice alum, but I ended up going to Schlumberger. But so obviously that is that would be one of the things that I find challenging. But like there's a lot of things, just the amount of this deception and lies, the depth of it is hard to stomach. But that's why I think the flat earth and God and the Bible are very interconnected, because in order to pull off some kind of deception like this, it has to be God doing it. There's no other entity that is clever enough on the grand scale like this to orchestrate it. It has to be God. And so that's why my channel focuses, I try to focus more effort on the God aspect, because I do feel like the flat earth honestly has been proven. Just again, obviously ball earthers will not like that, but I would say a lot of people, and credit to other people that are not me, I'm just kind of like dotting the I's a little bit for myself, crossing the T's. But we now have bigger questions to answer on a personal level. Is what are the implications of the fact that the earth is flat and not moving, and a majority of the things that we've been told throughout our life are lies, and potentially by people we love, and trust, like our teachers and stuff. And they may not have been doing it. They're probably not doing it in a malicious way. Bold counsel is like the pool balls on a pool table are spheres. That doesn't mean that the pool table is a sphere. So I just, it's like, just again, I'm not trying to be rude to the ballers, but the kind of apologetics you guys use to us matters. Like we're not, you might think that we're dumb, but we're not. Like we're not like a different strain of human, that is not like you guys. We are like you. We bleed and stuff and all that. So if you tell us stuff that's bullshit, we're going to be aware of that. And you use analogies that are absolutely irrelevant. That doesn't make sense. The shape of one thing does not infer another unless they have an interaction with one another, and that type of thing. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. So whenever I hear stuff like that, I find it kind of sad, but we should move on. You can move past those things now. Let's get to some of the better arguments. And to me, existence of gravity vectors, all these kind of things, like these are real things. These are, and the stakes are high, and I'm not trying to like be a, drama queen here, but the stakes on this topic is extremely high. This is not just who shot JFK, like all the elections are rigged and all that. Those obviously have, certain implications. This is way beyond that. And, way beyond that. There are lots of people who are out there using the Bible as if it's somehow authoritative. And, this could potentially discredit it entirely. And so this is a very important discussion. Wait, sorry. So we have Jagnarth was saying, do you think Tesla knew about the flat earth to produce what he did? About the flat earth to produce what he did. Can you just clarify that, man? Sorry, like I'll get to that. If you can just reword that. I'm not sure if you're talking about, whenever I think Tesla right now, I think of the car and I think of Elon Musk, but I'm assuming you're talking about the Tesla of old, the actual Tesla. So if you can just reword that. 99.9% of flat earthers firmly believed in the spinning globe. The difference is that we actually question what we believe. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's a big, it's a major hurdle for a ball earther, especially one, I think, who has equity in ball earth. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're a teacher, or if you're someone is an educator in your family, and all that kind of stuff, that is a difficult thing to digest, and shout out to Zoom, man. Appreciate all your efforts, dude. I love your channel and your enthusiasm, and you're like the modern day Gandhi with all your fasting, bro. I gotta fast a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, it's a big hurdle to climb, to leave, a paradigm that, is so ingrained in all of us. I think this is why Russian Vids, not to keep kind of putting his name out there, but he was very influential for me personally, just because he almost like warmed me up to flat earth. It first took, the 33. Oh, like, yeah, it looks like 33 kind of appears, and then I would go out and I would make some observations, like, yeah, like 33 kind of seems to be kind of all over the place. And then 666 would kind of like show up. I'll be like, yeah, yeah, it kind of does seem like that stuff is popping up here and there. And then, it does kind of seem like all the politicians are just kind of like, talking amongst themselves, and then, giving us the leftovers. And then, I got kind of, had to progress to it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think a lot of people would, and that's why I have a lot of respect for Russian Vids, even though we don't, agree on every, dot and tittle, but he is a pioneer in the truest sense of the word. And I have a feeling there was many posts that he did that people were like, what on earth is this, guy talking about, and credit to him, he's made a lot of it mainstream. But yeah, so the barrier is there. Again, the once, I do believe actually that God is going to keep it ambiguous if this is him orchestrating this divide, because ultimately he wants people to, first of all, to like come to their own understanding. And so I have to be a lot better in not being rude to people, because they could ultimately come to our side. And I'm not saying that, in some kind of like a moralistic or virtuous sense, but I do think that, obviously a flat earther was once a ball earther. So I can be a little bit, sarcastic and rude and stuff. But, I think that ultimately, I think God wants everybody to make up their own mind and like, ask questions, and get to truth, and then feel like they had a part of getting to the answer themselves. And so, okay, so how do you explain how we get gold on the earth? Is that a question related to just wondering about just the depth that we can explore? I guess I'm not sure how that is something that would be a problem on flat earth. If you can just clarify, because that's not something I've thought about, like mining and all that. Yes, Tesla said our universe is frequency, vibration, energy. Man, I think that's I have a lot of thoughts on that kind of stuff. I don't really post it just because, again, just from like a PR perspective, I don't want people necessarily to come and get that kind of a vibe, kind of like, pardon the pun, from my channel. But I do believe that that if God were to exist, he would be kind of the embodiment of all these different things, like frequency, vibration, energy. He's described in the Bible as the most high power. And then so, as an engineer, former engineer, that kind of, elicits thoughts of, electricity and all that kind of stuff. And so he is, all of these things that we're experiencing are things that are reflective of his nature. And, those things to me are the things that possibly are the more like elemental levels of him that you mentioned, like frequency, vibration, and energy. If you're an entity that is that complex, it's not like he can just sit down and talk to us about like, like I did this yesterday, and then, I did this, I had dinner and all that. That's not the way God is. He would be an entity that we would not know what is going to come out of him until he gives us what I consider a slice or a cross section of his idea, and that's all we could understand at that time. And so, to me, Jesus Christ is a cross section of the Most High, and his perfect representation in human form. Okay, so someone was like, about the Planck experiment, you can get the globe earther view by computing the force vectors from Newton's law of gravitation, plotting them on paper. Yeah, so that's the point of this, is that we understand the force vectors orientation, so that's not a debate. Like, we know that just by what we would observe if we're on a ball, that there would be vectors that are pointing towards the center of the earth. They would have to, or else people would not. There's no other explanation for why people are walking around on a ball and things are on this ball, and it's all good, so we know the orientation. So thankfully my experiment removes the need to get too concerned about the actual magnitude of the forces, because we only care about the orientation, because it is apparently this change in orientation with the level that is causing the level to move. That's why a level moves. It's concerned about orientation, not magnitude. Yeah, I mean, the Big Bang, like whether we believed it or not, it was just, to me, it was like in the back of our mind. It was just a way for us to kind of hand wave our way, and move on to, what's for lunch, what's for dinner, and, all the other problems that we have, in life. So I'm not even trying to be rude with people who believe in that, and cling to that as their explanation for the beginning, because we've all done it, and I find that religious people who are too, adamant that, God did it, I was there, I helped him do it, and like we can't go down that road either, because that's definitely didn't happen. or else that person would know the shape of the Earth conclusively. Yeah, we can get the directions, man. We know that's the thing, is that we know the directions. We know, and what I can't tell you the exact equation necessarily for like 3-dimensional space, but that would be not hard either if we knew the exact shape of the Earth. We could actually come up with the equations for the gravity vectors as their orientation, at least, not their magnitude. So that we could do that actually. And so I do know that if you do move far enough away, you're experiencing a different one. That's the important thing. Yeah, star busting otter. We are indeed talking about flat Earth. Gold comes from supernovas. It's pseudoscience. No, Zoom, man, credit to you, dude. I think you're on the forefront. I have to be better about that. I see other people doing that out in the streets, and I wish I came across your channel when I was living in New Jersey. I was in New Brunswick for a while and then Jersey City. So I could have came by and said hello, but it's a lot, man. I've mentioned it to people at work and all that. And it's uncomfortable, man. Like it is a truth that is extremely uncomfortable. And I think in many ways, I want this to be behind us. It's like this, I just want to kind of move on from this. I either want to like stop thinking about it or just deal with the objective reality of what the shape is right in front of us. And so, yeah, I don't miss it. I don't miss the Northeast that much, man. I'm in Houston now, but it was still a good time. But yeah, so I think that all the stuff that people are doing, I think it's just a matter of time that someone's going to come up with something that, is reproducible, rigorous. There's no error in the tolerances of the devices or whatever. And I think the simpler the experiment is, it's going to be obviously easier to reproduce and then harder to debate. And so in my experiment, obviously, if I could do something like that without the drones, that would, but that's, for at least for now, that's the best that I could come up with. But, I'll keep thinking of different experiments, but that one for sure, if someone did that, and then it started off, the two levels started off level, and then they just kept progressing, non-CGI capture of that, and the thing just started moving. I mean, that to me, actually, so I would accept it, obviously. Like I would be appreciative that someone would do that. I would do it myself, and then because I would just kind of recreate their experiment myself, and then yeah, that would be it. My conjecture is that you could do that experiment for as far as you can go until you hit the firmament. Until you hit something, you can go as far as you want. If you're not, as long as you don't get hit by a building or a tree or something like that, you could keep that Planck daisy chain going, and then it's going to be flat. Yeah, that mirror one is good. I think that definitely is kind of, man, they're really kind of, poking the bear, so to speak. Like they're getting at something that, those kind of things are very, very hard to, refute. How could that, reflection be going over a curve of any amount? But yeah, I think the ingenuity of that group was great. I think like all the guys that are doing, all the guys and girls, all the people that are doing all the images and stuff, to me, like I find a lot of that too is like all of us literally going back to school from the beginning, and like Nathan Oakley's channel is a great example. Like I literally, and I'm not trying to brag because obviously I feel like I've been indoctrinated, but I almost literally went back to school like from the beginning, watching his debates and like just all that stuff, like really like how do our eyes work? How do cameras work? Like, what are we looking at and all that kind of stuff, perspective and like the math behind it and angular size and all these kind of things. Like, it's, it was a great, I have a feeling those guys, even if they ended up being wrong, which obviously I don't believe that they are, I think that just that process alone of what they've learned and what they've shared for all of us, to me, is extremely valuable. I would actually say he's really good at debating. I think I've never met him, or I don't interact with Nathan or any of his crew, like except for occasional messages here and there. But You have to also understand, and I'm sensitive to people as well. I try to be with someone like Reds too. It's like they are the quote unquote pioneers. They have a lot on their shoulders. Like they're doing this daily. You know, I get to just kind of post one video here and there, and you know, throw in my little dotting the I's and stuff. But you know, these people are pioneers. They have a lot of, you know, responsibility to say the right thing, you know, and be concise and get to the point, and you know, in many ways evangelize, even though that's not what their objective is. They're just learning and sharing. But you know, they have to you know, again, I'm not making excuses for people on both sides, but I think he's definitely a very talented debater. Okay, so what's going on here? No one has proved the globe. Feelings don't count. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think the way I see things, and with truth in general, is that, so the question is time zones, and so that's not something that that we have to like explain. I think that there are a lot of other things that we would have to explain. Like I had a debate recently with a guy talking about, you know, earthquakes and like you know, just all these different things related to geology and stuff. Those are real things that we have to explain, you know, like just tangible things, you know, phenomenon and all that kind of stuff. But time zones and all that kind of stuff, I mean, that is a natural thing that will come out of whatever the answer ends up being. So, you know, that's the same thing of asking how do you explain time zones? It's the same thing as asking us, you know, how does the sun and moon work on a flat plane if we do live on a flat plane? And so we can get to that first, and then your answer, you know, the question to your answer will fall out immediately. No, that's not true. I think and again, this is not to be rude, but the Ball Earth PR is awful. You guys have absolutely not proven it, and the more you say you have, the more we know that we're on the right track. Like it's, if you would at least, even if you just would say that we kind of get your point, but we think that all of this stuff is stronger evidence. If you guys came with even that angle, you probably have, you know, kept a flat earther, a baller a little bit longer. I don't think anybody would be, you know, withheld from the truth by that. But I don't think that you guys should say stuff like that, because it's just, it doesn't make sense, you know. And I had a debate with Fight the Flat Earth, and not to, you know, rag on him, but he's saying all the observations, everything from all human history, everything points to ball Earth, which is obviously not true, because he doesn't acknowledge the Bible the way I do. But you can't say all evidence points to a ball Earth when the Bible in and of itself points to a flat Earth. And so that is not true, that all evidence points to a ball Earth, because we have a book that is in every courthouse, at least here in America, and it's like, you know, it says something different. And so that is not true. And then obviously the observations and the images and, you know, experiments and stuff that people are doing, in the very least, raise questions. Have you guys seen Simon Dan? I find, like, honestly, like, I don't know these people obviously personally, but I find it's kind of funny with YouTube. You get to like learn about people's like character and stuff, and like just like in this movie that I feel like we're living in. And I find Simon Dan's apologetics kind of poor. Reds, I just give him credit largely because of his energy, and he always has an answer, even if obviously, you know, we'll disagree with it. But yeah, Simon Dan does not come across to me, at least the way he is right now, as a you know, a gifted apologist for ball Earth. So how deep does the Earth go if you dig to the bottom? I mean, that's a good question to think about. That doesn't change anything. Obviously, you know this about the shape of the Earth, but you know, there's no reason to ask us that. And again, I'm not trying to pick on you, healthy, wealthy, and stealthy, but you have to be careful. And again, there's no like implications for this beyond just like a debate, but you have to be careful the things you ask us, because the more you ask us stuff like that, the more we start realizing that the conversation is going nowhere. And so it's kind of like when you're in a debate, you know, with like a loved one or something, and they want to like change the topic, or they want to leave, or ask something that you know is like just not related or ridiculous. You know, it's not a good thing, you know. So like, you can't ask us something like that. If we knew the depth of the earth, then we would have the you know, the equipment and the whatever to have done a lot of other things. You know, we could tell you, probably give you a good approximation for the extent of the dome, you know, above us, and all this kind of stuff. You know, we could give you tons of different things if we had that number handy. If the earth is flat, why lie about it? So this is, to me, is the only logical explanation, is that God is behind it. There is absolutely no way that there's a bunch of Freemasons or people just got in a room, you know, 400 or 500 years ago and just said, you know what, you guys, we're bored, you know, let's just hit them with the ball earth, you know, let's just whatever, man, like who cares? It's just going to be fun. We'll laugh. You know, let's do this ball earth thing and just mess with these people. That doesn't make sense, you know, and that deception on that level is only, you have to give credit where credit is due. God is behind it. And God was hiding himself, and he's not anymore. And so there's some people who are looking forward to seeing him, and there's some people that are not, you know, and may he have mercy on both of us, because, you know, if we ever encounter God in our lifetime like that, or just, you know, encounter God, and the Bible says it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living power. And we have no idea what that would even mean, to be in the presence of an entity that is able to create the earth and all the people and all that. Like, we can't even wrap our mind around it. And in many ways, it makes atheism make sense, because it is so hard to believe that something could do that. So I feel that flat earth is one of the major precursors to God revealing himself to us as a people, but in particular his children. Yeah, it's not a financial thing, because they already have financial control. I understand that narrative is put out there, but that doesn't make sense when they're already doing the money printing. So it is true that they don't get financial gain from it. They could, if they wanted to come into my apartment right now and take whatever they wanted and just make up a story of something, you know, I did something offensive to them or whatever, they could take it. You know, it's theirs. What are they going to do? What am I going to do? And so that little bit of money that goes to NASA and all that stuff, and that can't be that's not the overarching reason why we're all sitting here debating about the shape. I think God might be behind it too, because what better way to see the truth than teach? But yeah, to me, that's at least from our human perspective, is that God, to me, drags his children through lies in order to appreciate the truth. And those who appreciate the truth, he will redeem that in some way that he decides. And then those who are stuck in lies, and the Bible says those who, you know, do not come into the truth, they will not be saved. And so, you know, everybody gets the amount of truth that God has decided what he'll give. So we can't, you know, we can't take credit for anything that we end up believing that ends up being true. But you know, that to me is a very, very powerful point. That sorry, let me get the handle. That Chris said that, you know, and I feel that as well, that this is a conditioning. There's just too many lies out there that are kind of obvious now, that to me, either they serve a really righteous purpose or we're just getting hosed, you know, and I leave that open as just, you know, the universe is just like effing with us. It's possible. The question for me is, what do we do next? People are afraid to stand up to authority. YouTube is suppressing this stuff, so we are boxed in. So the only thing I would say to that, assume truth, and this is definitely not me trying to preach to you in any way, but what I do kind of in my own life think of this now is that God is doing this directly to us. Like, I had a moment after I became a flat earther where I was kind of like upset, you know, at all my teachers, and like I felt like I lost, you know, and I'm a competitive person, so I was like, oh my God, like they won. They absolutely ran circles around me from, you know, age 5 to I was in school, you know, till I was like in my early 30s. And I just felt defeated, you know, but I had to like recognize that only God could orchestrate this. And so I'm not saying go and yell at God or trash talk him and stuff like that, but we have to understand that the concept of YouTube and Google and the internet and these are all ideas that God came up with. And so he is using outlets, like you and others to push the truth out there. And then he's also using other outlets to suppress the truth. And so if we do not have suppression of truth, in my opinion, we would have the kingdom of heaven here. We would be able to make it ourselves, just through the truth, just through the truth that God exists, just through the truth of everything, then the kingdom of heaven over time would be established. We would start eating proper foods. We would start, living truthfully, and I'm pointing the finger to myself. So to me, I think this is controlled opposition, that obviously God likes, when, his people go through things and are tested, and ultimately he's looking for the way we respond. And so I'm definitely not the best example of that. I tend to kind of be in the moment and get upset and kind of whine, honestly. But there are moments where we have to try and practice, be doing it in a virtuous way, like Jesus Christ, who accepted a grisly death. Do you think China truly got rocks from the moon? I find all that stuff funny now. I can't, and I wasn't even trying to be rude on Reds' Hangout. That I can't go back from finding that funny now. So I don't know, they could hit me with some image that ends up of something being real, but I wouldn't believe it. So, I just find all of that stuff, and I honestly find the Chinese stuff just kind of analogous to a lot of the stuff they fake. I find a lot of their stuff worse CGI if there is such a thing. Another reason behind the lie is that a bunch of really smart Freemasons wanted to limit people getting to heaven because then maybe your soul is recycled. There is something going on. Obviously, if there is a spirit world, there is something going on that we can't see, obviously, with our physical, with our eyes. But, I think there is, especially once God exists, we know that through Flat Earth. I think a lot of these questions become reasonable to ask. And I'm not saying we can have the answer until, God tells it to us if he chooses to. But I mean, these kind of things are, then we start to ask ourselves, why are these things happening? Why is there a little cabal of people, and why do they have what do they have against us, and stuff. So he's like, Zoom Truth is like, how come people don't care the Chinese moon is brown? That's mad funny. Yeah, so Asan is asking about where's the science behind bringing someone back from the dead, the resurrection. And so, that's the whole point of the term supernatural. The word supernatural would never need to have been invented if there was not an example of it. And that's just one of many, in my opinion. A healing could actually be somewhat natural, where God is accelerating the healing with a touch of his hand, but it could also very much just be a supernatural thing, that God restores things to a perfect state. And I think resurrection from the body is beyond natural. It's supernatural. So we would not lean on science to explain something like that. God could give one a scientific explanation, I'm sure. But you definitely you can't ask me that question. It's better to ask him. Do I believe the Chinese government exists? Yeah, they're all in coordination. I think that's where Flat Earth and whether you believe in that or the moon landing hoax, that immediately means that there is this kind of one world sort of shadow government. And so anybody who's waiting for that to happen in the future in the end times, I mean, it's already here if you're a flat earther or a moon hoaxer, moon landing hoaxer. Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, you could. Yeah, to me, that's a bit of a semantic thing. That's fair enough. I mean, it could be supernatural. Could be something you don't understand yet. And this one example would be you would have to go to God. If any human starts telling you, first of all, anything about the spirit world and like what it is and what a spirit is, and like I don't know. To me, that person is very, very likely on some stuff that you don't really want to be around that person, you know. And if I ever go down that road with any kind of concreteness, you know, like flag my videos to YouTube, you know, so my channel gets shut down because that's just not in our realm, you know. Just knowing that, believing that there's a spirit world is enough for us. Would be hard enough for a lot of us to digest, even those who are spiritually inclined. So talking about, you know, reincarnation or what I feel is a form of reincarnation, or like, you know, Jesus's resurrection, that's not something that you know, that's way down the road. That's God exists, and that's like all this other stuff that would need to be happen first in order to get any kind of understanding and how that's possible. Hey, Rapid X, what's up, man? Just I'll just say hi to him. So uh, let's see. Yeah, I do. Shivets, Jagnarth, I do believe in reincarnation. I can't give you anything more concrete than you know, the verses in the Bible that allude to it. I think that it's kind of an easy. It helps me digest the reality and the Bible a little bit more, even though I find a lot of it difficult to understand. Um, the kind of things that God does to people, and in particular those that He loves. But so to me, reincarnation is a little bit, makes, you know, swallowing that pill a little bit easier, because it means that there is some kind of cumulative thing that's happening, and that we are experiencing why we're experiencing certain things now that we have absolutely no idea, not just in our own life but with others. And so I do believe in that. I think it's kept vague on purpose in the Bible, and it's not meant for everybody to get. And I'm not saying, you know, that means I'm better than people, but it could also mean, like I just said, I had a bias to that. But to me, it's very, very clear that there is some notion of the energy that exists, if it does, in us, has experienced another generation on this earth in the past. Yeah, I agree with Zoom Truth. I think that it's and it really does come down to first and foremost knowing that God exists. It doesn't. You don't even necessarily have to have too many details of that God, but the most important thing that has been removed is just that God exists. And once God exists, we're at least allowed to talk about God openly. You know, in the school systems and even in churches, you're not even allowed to talk about God in any concrete way. It freaks people out. I find flat Earth actually freaks religious people out more than non-religious. That's why I sometimes gravitate towards gravity's fake, by the way, but I gravitate towards atheist types, like, or just kind of platforms like the Non Sequitur, because I find that they almost find it ridiculous. So like they'll still talk to you about it for kind of their entertainment. And so, but if you go to like a lot of religious people, especially those who are set in their ways, in their rendition of Christianity that they've maybe experienced their whole life, I mean, it freaks them out, you know, because like all of us, like it freaks us out. It's like, then God is like real, you know. It's like there is a very good chance, you know, to put it in probability, you know, that there's someone supervising us. Yeah, I'm very thankful for the flat Earth kind of stepping stone, because, you know, if one day, like, I were to have some kind of experience or whatever, I think like those are for certain people, but I don't think it would work well for me. So, the deception and then the flat earth and all these things, and then connecting with other people who believe the same thing, to me is like a nice way to like, approach God, and stuff. And so, yeah, flat earth to me, it doesn't give everybody hope in the world, because obviously people don't want to hear it. Some people don't want to believe it, think it's crazy and all that. And that, that will not change. Some people will obviously continue to believe that they're on a ball, but it has brought me a lot of hope. And so, that it would be the kind of purpose for my channel, if it has one sort of secondary benefit, would be to like, explain my thinking that got me here, and then potentially give somebody else hope that, that their life, whatever it is, good or bad, is serving some purpose, and it just doesn't terminate when we die, and to me, that's kind of the scariest thought, is like, you just live your life. You don't know when the end is, because it's could be random. And then, you just die, and it's over. To me, that is a very, very hopeless place. And yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not something I think about like 24/7. I think, again, it's overwhelming. I do think, like, let's say right now we could push a button and someone tell us, like, flash on our screen, flat earth is absolutely 100% true. That to me would be overwhelming. Like, I do believe that, and I do think that everything around me is reaffirming it. But if it were to like be 100% conclusive, like, they would either take us up in some ship or some spaceship shuttle or whatever, it would be overwhelming. So I think in some ways the slight ambiguity is healthy for us. I believe in consciousness far greater than we could ever understand with our measly human brains. The idea of God is real. However, I don't conform to the mainstream idea of it, nor him. Yeah, I don't get too caught up on the gender. I mean, that's not something to me that a person should get hung up on. Like I said, terms like energy, vibration, power, all those things are more reflective of a creative entity. The way I think of God more is the term creator, because to me, he is only able to create and to give. He's not a consumer or a leech in any way. He's not borrowing ideas from other people. He is the creator. He is the source of all ideas, of everything. Again, if he were to exist, he would be the creator. Everybody on this chat, this computer, everything that has been made was one idea. And that's, again, I'm not saying that that's easy to wrap our head around, but we're dealing with an entity that is that brilliant. Yeah, I agree with Zoom Truth in that statement, that he's dialoguing with somebody else, and it's like there is so much truth in it, and we can't kind of understand it all. It's just, there's too much there, and we wouldn't know where to apply it all the time perfectly, and we just have to do really the best that we can. I have a question. What made Starbusting Otter is like, what made you? I'm not sure if he's asking me or someone in the chat. But he's like, what made you start believing in flat earth? I think the moment that one major thing that I give credit to the Hebrews, and I know that they're very controversial and a lot of them are ball earthers. I give them credit for allowing me to complain, because they complain about everything. I'm not trying to be rude, but they sit on the corners and complain about everything that's wrong in the world. And so I felt like watching them, I was like, yeah, maybe I am allowed to complain. And then flat earth, and largely through Russian vids and Eric Dubé and all those back in the day, they gave me the ability and the license to now trust my senses. And so I can't necessarily say what day it was, but it was the moment that I realized, like, hey, I don't have to believe what somebody else says. I do not feel that we're spinning. And if I look up, the sun and the moon are clearly moving, and I'm not, and so, and then all the stuff that came after that, I think the foundational stuff was there. The way Russian Vids presents it in his charismatic way. It helps us, gives us confidence to like at least trust our senses and look into it, and then the path kind of started from there. I just can't handle organized belief systems based on non-reality and scientism. Yeah, I don't think that God is God obviously is a creator of all these different religions and all that kind of stuff. But to me, and I'm not trying to be rude to anybody who's found something positive in religion, but God to me is like he's creating all these buckets and you're free to go in them, but that he's not requiring you to go in them. It's like I don't think that that's something that God would want. He's not at all a conformist. In an ideal scenario, he wants all of us only to be absolutely enamored with him and his opinion. And then people would think, oh, well, God's arrogant. He just wants all of his attention. No, he wants that because his opinion is the only smart one. It's like if God were to exist, and I say if because I haven't had an encounter with him. Let's just say the 1 in the 10 to 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 the 10 chance that the Big Bang produced flat Earth, which obviously I don't believe, but let's just say if God exists, his opinion would be the best opinion. You may not like it or whatever, you can debate it, but whatever he says, whatever his thought that he would have, you would want to listen to it, for sure. And so to me, all these religions, all these different groups that are going on, a lot of it is just for control. And I think especially in these days, we have to all be very careful who we lend our ear to, challenge people, ask them questions, like, why are you doing this? What are your intentions? What is the purpose of your, whatever you're sharing and stuff. The Black Israelites claim that the Blacks, Native Americans, Hispanics are the real Israelites. What is your opinion? So I debate them, quite a bit. Like I used to more. They're here in downtown Houston, and so I agree with some of their views. I don't agree with a lot of their views on women in particular, and I don't agree with their lack of spiritual understanding about that in these days, because we don't have the history books and all that. To me, a person is an Israelite, is a child of God if they are seeking truth, if they understand that one sin is all sin. That means that we are in a broken state. And then that puts you in a very humble position, in my opinion, or believe that as best as you can. And, you are a person who is doing the best to, help the poor, and the defenseless and all that kind of stuff. And so, that to me, I would bank on that than just being, wearing fringes and prophesying. If I were to pick who would I rather be and take my chances in the judgment, I'd rather be, just a person who's pursuing truth and humble, understanding that we are guilty of the entire law, even if we don't know what it is, and then do whatever you can to alleviate suffering from people. To me, that's an Israelite. That's someone, if I were to, go to heaven, I would want to be around those people the closest. But I do believe, and again, this is not for everybody, but Jesus Christ is a dark-skinned person, and I do believe that the so-called Negroes represent a good majority of the Jews in the world right now. But that doesn't mean that a Jew from the tribe of Judah in modern day could not be from any other ethnic class. Like I could be a Jew, I could not be. I could be one of the 12 tribes, I could not be. Anybody could. We don't know. We don't have the history books. We cannot, trace things back. We don't have the records for that. We don't have migration patterns to any kind of precision. And God did this on purpose. In these days right now, it's purely a spiritual thing. And to me, it'll actually be very obvious. And I think a lot of them are just under very, very poor leadership. Their leadership, in my opinion, is absolutely atrocious. And I hope a lot of them get out of that stuff. Yeah, I think to kind of echo Zoom Truth's point, man, anybody who claims to know the Bible like very, very well, especially the book of Revelation. Like, it's just not easy to get, and I think that's why I like the last debate that I did on non sequitur. The guy accused me of just kind of cherry picking quotes and making a narrative through like kind of cherry picking the Bible. And I had to like reflect in that moment. It's like, that's actually what I'm doing, and it's like, I just have to admit that that's what I am doing. It's like, I can't tell you like from the first word in the Bible to the end and like rhyme off the whole narrative, and give you a consistent story for everything. I can't do that, and that's not for me. That would only be, in my opinion, for Jesus Christ. And even he himself was humble enough to say he didn't know when the end is. So it's not even for him. And so there's a lot there. And, I just have to, I've kind of picked, different places and stuff. And so I'm going to try and start kind of going into it with a bit more continuity from beginning to end. But at this point, I'm definitely a person who's kind of, found a narrative through, cherry picking verses. I don't know, the non sequitur, like I like them just because, they allowed me on their like first debate thing and stuff. I was the guy in the chat, just kind of bugging everybody. So, I owe them a lot in terms of giving me, a chance to speak and stuff. But the one thing that, I do give not just them, but, platforms like them, they are open to talking. Like, I get a lot of uncomfortable discussions with Christians on the mark of the beast. And so I find that to be deplorable. And I'm not trying to like make fun of anybody here in any rude way, but if you're a Christian out there and you are afraid to talk about the mark of the beast, to me, there's something wrong. It's like, you need to understand that verse. I'm not saying the person has to take the same stance as me, that it is this and it's going to happen here and all that, but you need to understand that verse if you claim to be a Christian. Like, you need to either say, I don't think it's going to happen soon, I think it's going to be this way, or I'm going to ask God for understanding or whatever. But so non sequitur, they didn't censor me on that, and honestly, I get censored by Christians that I know, that I've known for over a decade, and so that's the angle that I come with them, that, they're just like, and to be fair, like they just think it's a joke, and I'm not being rude, but like they think the whole Bible is a joke. So like, they're like, whatever, you can talk about mark of the beast, that crap's not going to happen or whatever. So, so that's, it's consistent, and like, they're not worried, like the mark of the beast is going to happen. They're like, that's just some gibberish that was at the end of that book, that fairy tale book that you keep reading and stuff. So it's like, it's kind of like entertaining for them. But I do think going on platforms like that and the kind of street preaching that, Zoom Truth and others are doing, if you can like just change the direction of one person's thinking, like a half a degree, when they walk away, and they just leave that door open. I'm not saying they become like us or whatever, but like, that's a powerful thing, and so maybe there's one person on there who has the same questions about gravity that I did, or, thinks of it that way, or starts questioning, maybe how do we understand these vectors? They're in the same location, but, how are they in the same location, but not interfering with one another? I don't quite get that, and then they'll go and, do their due diligence, which is good. The power of creation is real, and within us all, it is God. To me, it's true beauty. Where does it all come from? It's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, to me, if there is something in us, and this is pure speculation, but if what the Bible says is true, that the body dies without the soul, whatever that soul is, and I do not claim to have any understanding beyond the possibility that that could actually happen, that is God. That thing is not us. Like, we did not make that. Like, we can give our parents credit for the body and, the cells and all that, but that thing, whatever it is, that people think of it as the voice, or the mind, the energy, whatever, that is God. That is a one thing that we are borrowing from God. And so I would actually in many ways agree with what Hassan said. The Bible just refers to that in a small g. It's not like big G. And I'm not trying to, get the Freemasons excited out there. Bible says like God's children are like the little G, and he's the big one. Yeah, we are gonna, test gravity. I think this is still sort of, something I was kind of thinking about and stuff. But I have a feeling that more and more people are gonna start realizing that they either just want this debate to end and they just figure it out, and like put their 2 cents in there and just be done with it. But yeah, I think just with the amount of technology, the amount of energy, the amount of resources that are out there, I think that if given enough time, that there will be and no like obstruction from like YouTube and all that. Because it is true that without YouTube and some platform to communicate, it is going to be very difficult to not necessarily prove it, but to like share the discovery for whatever side. And so let's say there's no obstruction and like there's a 2 or 3 year runway. Yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if something didn't come out that everybody could like sleep well at night and just there's no debate. It's like, watch the video. If you don't like it, I'll do it right in front of you. And if you lose, you pay for the material. You could do stuff like that with people, and I think that it'll be obvious. Yeah, no, nothing. You cannot make things from nothing, and that's we gotta move away from that. Like atheism to me, whether even if it's a ball or a flat, atheism is dead. Like to me, the ball earth is a more complicated thing to make than the flat earth. So God is more involved in the ball earth. And I'm not saying, obviously he's equally involved. He made it, whatever it is, but the ball earth to me should actually scream God more, and stuff, because there's just way too many moving parts. If that is an outcome of a statistical event, that is virtually impossible to have those things work that way. It's just not going to work. Just that's basic probability. And so anybody who gets too heavy on science and claims that their quote unquote religion, their foundation, their deity is science, your deity is actually statistics, because you are claiming that the origin of all of this is the outcome of a statistical event. And so your science starts after that, after the statistical event is done and has produced this outcome of varying complexity. And then so that's when you rely on explaining everything. So that's a very important distinction. And so statistics is not in your favor. For something like the Big Bang, being able to orchestrate the complexity of the structure that we're standing on, and then all the human beings and all of our nuances and complexity and all of that, it's a statistical impossibility. It's not even worth entertaining. And again, I'm not saying come worship my God or anything like that, or but that whole atheism stuff, that to me is gone. We don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to think along those lines. We can now move towards God in whatever way that he brings us in. Do you believe in pure spiritual realms and material realms? I would say that I think that I do think the spirit world is actually the thing that's driving this existence. Obviously, if we were to see it and stuff, it would overwhelm us. But if there is like a notion of causality, it is the spirit world that is driving the physical, and that interface, obviously, I don't understand. And in many ways, I don't know for sure that it exists. I have belief, and flat earth, adds to that belief a lot. I'd put more money on the wager, not that I'm betting on stuff like this, but I do believe that there is at least that transition. It's not just the physical, but I do think if it were to be order of operations, for sure, the spiritual world can freely engage with us in ways that we can't see. But if there's like spirits or entities in my apartment, obviously I wouldn't know. Okay, so this one guy saying, I believe in the Big Bang because of the evidence that there is to prove it. Now, one question in science is that we don't know how or why it exploded. Physicists are still trying to figure it out. Yeah, there's you can't figure it out because there's no natural laws that we would know at that point, because we would have to believe that all the things that happened afterwards are a result of that experiment. That is, it is a statistical outcome of that. We can't, you can't say that the things that existed after existed before, because that would not be the Big Bang then. That would be something else. And so if the Big Bang is the explosion of energy, of creativity that created all the things afterwards, and that is the causal, thing that, was the starting point of everything else, I don't think you would be able to figure it out with any kind of, detail. You wouldn't get anything useful from it, because you would have no way of even, talking about how an explosion like that could then be the creator of all these different things. It's like, to me, that's like a reverse engineering problem that will go absolutely nowhere, because you would have to then think again that explosion created, natural laws, created a structure to stand on, created people that behave in a certain way and in a predictable way and all that. I mean, there's so many different layers that no reverse engineering could do that justice. That to me is a waste. That's arrogant to even try and go down that road. Dude, if you believe in the Big Bang, then it's fine. But we are way out of sync. I'm way too gone from those schoolboy theories. We're not necessarily, I agree that you may not necessarily be saying something came from nothing, but we're saying that those things that came out of the Big Bang did not exist beforehand. Like whatever you call them, all the natural laws, all the, order, all the different things, all the structure of the earth, it did not exist in that shape, I guess. It would be something else. It would be, I don't know if it was a point that just had infinite energy and just exploded, or I don't even know how people will explain that. But even if we give you the conservation of mass and all that, and we don't gripe on that too much, which obviously is an issue, but those things that came after, like all of us fundamentally, and in the earth and all that, those things and those structures and those forms did not exist before that. And so that's a reverse engineering problem that has infinite variables. Yeah, that's a good point. I think Hassan is like, believing in any explanation mainstream says without being able to verify it ourselves is the problem. It's science morphing into religion or scientism. And that's true. And, that's where we have to push back on atheists, delicately. But, they pick on us for being religious, and I have been through different phases of my life, and they're stealing from our playbook. They're doing the same stuff we are. You like, just trust Neil Tyson, trust the body of science, and just don't think so deep. We got to figure it out. If you have any questions, come to me. Or just don't worry about those gravity vectors and whatever. Just move on. Get the Theodolite app and everything will be fine. Like, we're not doing that. Like, not to be rude, we don't trust you guys on the shape of the earth. I don't trust you guys on the monetary policy. I don't trust you guys on the justice system. I don't trust you guys on anything. It's like, I think the hardest thing for me now would be to not go back to Ball Earth, because that, I've been there for most of my life. It would be going back on what is plainly obvious happening in front of us, is the enslavement of humanity. And nothing will change my view on that. It's obvious. It's happening right in front of us. It's happening to even the upper class. The upper class in America are being enslaved. People think that, slavery is just like a, antiquated term and all that, relegated for barbarians. barbaric time periods and all that kind of stuff. No, the slavery is happening now, and it's happening to even the upper class. There's people who are VP CEOs, don't have jobs, looking for jobs, and they probably have more money than the average person, but they still are at the mercy of this economic system. Like, they don't just walk into any company and be like, yeah, I was a CEO before, where do I sit? You guys are going to start paying me, right? That's not the way it works. And look at GE, how many different CEOs they've had in the last 5 to 10 years. It's like just a revolving door. If you don't come in and deliver, they're going to find the next guy. And then they hope that when they bring in the next guy, the stock price will go up a little bit because people will be like, oh yeah, we got somebody new, they'll fix it. They're as expendable as we are. And so I think, to me, that's the part where, if I were to see a discussion or be a part of a hangout where it's like 20 bald earthers all talking about the financial enslavement of mankind, I'd have to I literally would rub my eyes. I'd be like, am I seeing this? Like, that would freak me out. That would be like, what the hell is going on here? And I'm not trying to be rude, like saying they're all heartless or anything like that, but that would be some kind of shot, slight ding to my worldview. But we don't see that. They don't want to talk about questions we have, observations that we've seen, just as much as they don't want to acknowledge the fact that a majority of people on Earth right now are enslaved, financially, religiously, spiritually, education. I mean, the list goes on. Yeah, that's true. Drink water is most definitely doesn't mean power. Money doesn't necessarily mean power in this world. The game is way bigger. Those with knowledge control those without it. And that's true. That's why this whole NASA narrative of them siphoning money from us and all that doesn't make sense. They already have the money. It's like that whatever 50 million a day or something like that. We got to move past that for people who are into flat Earth. Or, obviously I'm not here to dictate a person's journey, but that just don't spend too much time on that. That's not what's going on here. They don't need that money and all that. There's something else going on. In my opinion, God's going to pay us a visit fairly soon. Money is a tool of mind control. Mind control is power in this world. Yeah, that's well said. I think it's like perceived power and influence and all that kind of stuff, goes a long way for sure. I think like the Rothschilds and all these families that we kind of talk about as kind of the boogeymen, they're not like sitting there with their bank accounts and stuff. They're the people who are orchestrating, monetary policy, and like what the interest rate's going to do. Are we going to raise rates this, for this meeting or not? And, they're making decisions on that level. So what does money mean to them? They or someone they know in their network owns a majority of the places that they will walk around on this earth. So they don't have like issues of like, oh, did I bring my credit card and stuff? It's beyond that. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I've seen this with my own eyes. Like people at the VP level, have a bit of integrity, stand up for what they see happening at that level, and they push back a little bit. And they're once you're unemployed, you're unemployed. It doesn't matter. That's the same title for everybody. And in many ways, for those people at the higher job titles, it's harder for them to find their place back in corporate America because there's fewer positions for them. And so that's why I think that I feel like these times are very, very spiritual. I can't, pinpoint what it's going to happen exactly in any kind of precise way, but I do think flat Earth and all the deception and enslavement going on in the world has to point to something. Like if it's just for nothing and we're all just effed, like, I mean, that's bad. That would really suck if that's the case. And I leave that open as a possibility. We could just be the generation that God or the universe just looked down upon us, and he's just like, whatever, man, you guys are taking the L, all you zombies. I tricked you on the shape of the Earth and got you on a bunch of other things, and I got you loaded up with student debt, and just suck it up. Yeah, there are calculations that show the sun is not as far as the mainstream narrative. Like, to me, I find that funny. Like 93 million, like, come on, like, you know that Masons are behind that, because that is the part that the left hand mocks us, because dude, that number is like preposterous. Like, that is like not even anywhere near like that is ridiculous. Like, they're definitely making fun of us. And I didn't even know that was the number for like a majority of my life until I got into this stuff. So there's a lot of people who might know that number at a young age, and like we all just like whatever. Yeah, it's 93 million. Like, when you just, it's not even anywhere near on that magnitude. Like, that's ridiculous. And so that to me is, in a way, truth in plain sight, because it's kind of like the anti-truth in plain sight. Like, a normal person, like, and I'm pointing to myself, would look at that number at whatever age and just look up and be like, no, you know, like something's going on here, you know, like that there's no way it's 93 million miles away. That's preposterous. All right, so I'll just leave it at that. My stream is kind of hanging up a little bit, but I don't know if anybody else has any questions or thoughts, as I wrap up. I'll kind of try and do this once in a while. Like, I'll try and host some people if we can, get some other people to talk about experiments and okay. Yeah, so someone's making the point, because physicists, basically any scientists, are taught to think critically. So this is the part where we, again, ball earthers, just be careful, because like, this is not, you're not taught this. This is something that's brought out of people, to like think about things. And so, yeah, Zoom Truth, man, good to chat with you, man. So appreciate all your efforts, dude. And if I start doing that, street ministry, I'll try and upload some videos, and you can see some of the stories and stuff. But I appreciate your work, man. I like hearing what people say when they're kind of caught off guard and they don't need to kind of give they don't have time almost to give canned answers. That's what I like about approaching somebody. You're going to get their first and kind of honest, straightforward opinion. And so, I've made some signs and stuff, and I just have to get the motivation to kind of go out and talk to people and stuff. But yeah, man, keep at it, dude. That's awesome. But yeah, so the logic stuff, like, you guys don't do that to us, like, we're logical people, like, you fine, you can claim to have a more refined logic, or however you say it, but to say that you know yeah, dude, the cops, that's crazy, man. Like, even people who are preaching other stuff, like, the cops are getting involved. But in a way, it's like, take that as a sign, because like, if you were like preaching, and like, if YouTube's not shutting down your channel, or like, giving you a hard time about you know these shootings that are happening, and all these kind of, what I feel are, a lot of them are hoaxes, like, that we're onto something, and definitely from what I've seen from like Zoom Truth channel, like, he's aware of the the deception, and the parties that are in place to kind of keep the deception going. But yeah, I've been more careful with the way I word my hoax things. Like, I say my commentary. I'll put things in quotes, because I don't know if their search routines pick up on the quotations, because like, when someone reads shooting in quotes, they know that I'm like questioning whether it's real. But I don't know if their algorithms are quick enough to catch that um, like, meaning that I'm adding by putting it in quotes and stuff. So I think people are getting more careful and stuff. But I watched your video where you were kind of going through it, and I think like there's definitely something going on. Again, it doesn't seem good, like, because like, if they're doing it just like as a joke, that's disturbing, because like, you know, they're sharing information as it's true, as if it's true, these shootings. But you know, if there, I have a feeling there's something more sinister. There's a troll named Crisis Actor David Hogg, which I thought is hilarious. So yeah, I'm pretty sure they are. I think, you know, my channel will, I don't think there's any way it'll go more than 250 subs. And I think that's like, you know, I like the interaction that I get. I have a lot of respect for people who have really, really big channels, because like, man, it's a lot of work, dude, to keep it all together. But yeah, so the logic part, you know, just calm down with that. You know, like, we're all, you can debate who's smarter and all that, but we're not like a different species than you guys. You know, like we have studied. You know, you could say our degrees are a joke, and like we, you know, copied off the person next to us to get all of our degrees, or we fabricated all the pieces of paper that we've earned. But there's enough people, there's probably been enough people in this for a while now, a long while, that it's not a joke anymore. So all the like kind of ad homs on both sides, you know, we don't need that. If, you know, it's the experiment, or the groups of experiments and all that stuff have either happened or like not far away. So in my opinion, we will all be shortly, in his time, acknowledging the God of the Bible as the creator of all of this and ourselves. So don't, you know, I think that obviously the thought of God existing is an overwhelming thing, but if God exists and we hate him, we ultimately hate ourselves, because we are an expression of his creativity. And so there's no reason to hate ourselves. Yeah, take a basic math class. I get that a lot. You know, it's like, I don't know, like, I mean, I put my video resume on there just so at least people they can then go there and say I'm lying about that. But at least I give them something to, you know, critique, I guess, or have something to rest on. But taking like a high school grade 8 class, I was getting that from a person earlier and stuff, like, it's not helping their case. You know, like, we got to move past that, because, you know, that even if that were the case, you don't need that to understand these things, you know, like a building, you know, or whatever. Like, you know, you don't need a PhD in mathematics to look at a building, two buildings, and see them tilting or not tilting and make an inference, you know, like make a conclusion from that, you know, like it's, or see a level moving when it shouldn't be, or whatever, or observing a phenomena like that. That these are not, we're not solving pages and pages of mathematical proofs. You know, that stuff comes after, you know, and I think that's the part that, you know, there is a need for people, you know, if it's proven to be flat or a ball rigorously, yeah, then the next step is like, the people will then want to go in the details. They're like, well, okay, that's shape's been proven. Now I want to understand like earthquakes, or I want to understand geophysics. I want to understand, you know, the movement of the sun and all that in a specific way. And I want, you know, that's when you might need some of the math hardcore people to come in. But to assess the structure, the shape of the structure we're standing on, in many ways, having advanced degrees will hurt you. And we've seen that. Yeah, and honestly, the mathematics and stuff and physics is not taught to us well. It's not taught to us in an intuitive way. It's just everything is like said really, really quickly, and then those who kind of figure it out, you know, and can regurgitate it back do okay. But you know, again, this to me, this deception, this like kind of dumbing down to me, I hope has a righteous purpose, or else to me this life would just be a complete joke, honestly. Like, it just means that for a majority of my life I was deceived, or in the very least I wasn't allowed to ask questions and investigate things. So that seems very odd. All right, guys, so I'll leave it at that. So, you know, I appreciate you know, the people that came in and and all that. But you know, if you guys ever, want to talk, human to human or whatever, just send me an email. On the banner of my channel, I have my email. We don't have to be on a Hangout. We can just figure out a way to communicate. But let's keep in touch, and all the people out there who are on the flat Earth side and stuff. Let's keep at it. Let's be reaffirmed that there is an entity that is overseeing us, and kind of draw closer to that entity as much as he will allow. But yeah, Zoom Truth, let's do it, man. And so again, I appreciate all your efforts and all that, and for all the the comments and all that. So I look forward to dialoguing with you guys again, man. So have a good week, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.